Okay, just quickly, there are about 35 folks on the call today. Everybody except the presenters are going to be muted for the first portion of the workshop, just to avoid background noise and interruptions. But once we get to the discussion portion, we would encourage you all to raise your hand, participate in the chat, and or let us know if you want to ask questions by audio. In the meantime, feel free to use the chat function in Zoom for questions and comments during the presentations. And if you are able, we'd encourage you to share your name in Zoom and have your camera on so we can see who's here. And at this point, I'd also just like to ask folks, if you want to drop your name and where you're participating from today in the chat. We'd love to see who's here and who's participating in the workshop. So feel free to do that. Yeah, with that, I think I will turn it over to Amy Smith from National Grid, who's going to get us started today, talking a little bit about National Grid's work on gas leaks in their service territory. And then Walter from Eversource will be presenting as well. So Amy, do you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, and I'll bring up your slides while you're doing that?
Yeah, thanks. Can you hear me? Just want to validate. Excellent. Thank you.
Loud and clear.
All right. And I apologize. Just as this meeting began, a lot of really loud construction has started just outside my window here. So if it becomes a problem, just let me know and I'll defer. But,
not too bad so far, but that's the way things go on Zoom. I have a accordion player next door that seems to like to fire up the accordion when I'm doing public meetings. So great. I'm going to make this full screen for us.
Thank you. Sure. And
okay.
you can
How's that look?
Great. That's wonderful. I can just flip on to the first slide and we'll get started. So just first, I just want to thank Brooks and his team for planning this workshop today. I'm looking forward to a great discussion around gas pipeline safety issues and leaks. And I'd like to share with you some information about how National Grid approaches public safety and raising public awareness with first responders, as well as others in our service territory around what they should do if they smell a gas odor or if they find themselves in a position where they are responding to a potential gas leak situation. Eversource and I and National Grid have divided up the topics in the presentation. In general, we have very similar approaches, although the information I'm presenting now is specific to National Grid. Much of it will apply to Eversource as well, and I'm sure they'd be happy to distinguish for you where something might be different. So just the housekeeping there. And let's just start with some basics around pipeline safety efforts and what National Grid does to ensure that our networks are safe. So we do continuously test and inspect and repair our natural gas pipelines. You may see our trucks driving around doing what we call leak survey with the gas sniffers on the bottom. And we also do walking surveys throughout our service territory where every single inch of our gas mains and services are surveyed once every 3 years to identify leaks. We do a significant amount of training with local emergency responders on how to prevent and prepare for gas emergencies. We also do a lot of work educating excavators who dig near our pipes. So from a safety perspective, damages to our pipe represent a far greater safety hazard than your average gas leak. Oftentimes they're clearly unanticipated. And if operating around high pressure main, you could have escapes of high pressure gas in the area And knowing what to do if you arrive first on the scene is critical to protecting the public safety. We also do gas safety education programs in our local schools, and we identify and manage risk on our gas pipeline. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. Next slide, Brooks. Okay. Just advance my notes here. So with gas leaks in particular, it's important that you recognize when you may potentially be dealing with a gas leak, that you respond in a safe manner, and that the gas potential gas leak is always reported in an appropriate way, both to 911 and to National Grid. So using your senses is probably the best way to see a gas leak warning sign. First and foremost is the smell. I think most people are familiar with that rotten egg smell that we use to odorize our natural gas, because gas naturally does not have any odor. So we actually add the odorant to the gas so that if there is a leak, that you can smell the gas escaping. Look around you. You might see dirt blowing around where you smell the gas from a hole in the ground. You might see bubbling water if the gas leak is near a puddle. And sometimes you'll see dead or dying vegetation. Again, all these things don't always indicate a gas leak, but they are a good early warning system that there may be a problem in the area. And you may see a damaged connection to a gas appliance in your home, or you may see exposed pipe after serious rain and flooding or natural disaster like an earthquake, which we just recently had here in Massachusetts. So always, we always say when in doubt, make a call. Don't second guess yourself. It's extremely important that if you suspect a gas leak and you're smelling natural gas, that you do report that. If you're a first responder, I know we have some here on the call today, and you are there as in the head of the gas company, it's always good to assume that there is a danger. Again, don't second guess. Warn others and leave the area quickly. So always assist us in safe evacuation. For yourself and others around you, do not use a telephone or any electrical appliances, including light switches, garage door openers, doorbells, radios, TVs, cell phones. Any of these could cause a spark that could be a source of ignition and could ignite a natural gas. So we normally tell people don't raise or lower any windows, but if you're in your house and you smell gas there, open the door and move very quickly out. Don't try and do venting yourself. I'll leave that to the professionals. And then report the leak once you're safely, if you're inside, don't pick up the telephone and call while you're still inside smelling the gas leak. Leave the premise. Report the leak to National Grid, or you can call 911. Don't assume somebody else will report the leak. There are unfortunately some tragic examples where people smelled gas and failed to report the leak because they just thought somebody else would do so, or they called their landlord and left a voicemail message. This is not the right thing to do. Always call 911 or call the emergency number for your utility. I've included National Grid's emergency phone number here on the presentation. Do not return to the leak area to inform emergency personnel about it. They will have been notified. They'll know what to do, and they'll provide you with information later on if appropriate. And do not go back inside your home until National Grid personnel or your gas company personnel says it's safe to return. So don't make those assumptions on your own. Next slide, Brooks. Okay. A few tips for first responders regarding public safety. If 911 is called and you were the first responder, just make sure that you notify National Grid through your dispatcher into our dispatch area as soon as practical for all gas emergencies. So there's, we refresh and validate phone numbers every year to make sure that we know how to reach each other. Always good to make sure those are up to date. And when you arrive, here's a few precautions that we recommend. Always approach cautiously, try and stay upwind if possible. Park safely away from collapse zones and manholes. So it's really important that equipment doesn't cover up access to areas we might need to do to perform a leak investigation or to shut off gas. Most first responders are trained not to park on top of access to our facilities if possible. Help secure the perimeter. Evacuate people 330 feet in all directions. Stay away from manholes and sewers. Eliminate ignition sources. So should you see anything in the area that's a potential source of ignition, please remove it. Oftentimes we're also asking the electric service provider in the area to cut electricity. There's an active gas leak in the area to remove that as a source of ignition. Be sure that you are wearing the appropriate PPE when you respond. And if you have the right equipment, just monitor the atmosphere in the area. Next slide. Thank you. If you encounter a natural gas leak inside a building, important to take some precautions. Make sure you have a hand-charged hand line with a fog nozzle ready. Do not use any spark-producing equipment. Again, make sure you're not introducing a source of ignition. Make sure that you've evacuated people at least 330 feet away from the source of the gas leak. And then always coordinate with National Grid before ventilating. So gas has an explosive range for those who aren't familiar with that. And so there's a point at which gas becomes explosive based on the mix of gas to air. And if that mix goes too high, goes above a concentration of 15% gas to air, the gas no longer becomes explosive. And in fact, ventilating brings the gas back down into the explosive range. So always do that in careful coordination with your gas company so that you're making sure you're monitoring that and you know when you've reached a point when you've gone from an explosive range to a non-explosive range of gas, and then you'll go back into explosive range again. So we just ask that you work closely with the gas personnel who are there on the area. Okay, next slide. Right. Okay. So here's some tips for outdoor natural gas leaks. As you know, they can be caused by a lot of different reasons. Sometimes it's construction-related damage, as we talked about, people digging too close to gas company facilities, extreme weather, or pipe corrosion. So you may recall, I believe it was last week before on a weekend morning, there was a small earthquake that was felt throughout a lot of eastern Massachusetts. In responding to that, we always go out and we survey our gas systems in the area, but sometimes just that vibration alone, similar to vibration from construction activity, that might not actually hit our line, but could cause a disruption and cause the pipe to leak, could occur. And then just pipe corrosion, which leads to gas leaks. Again, contact National Grid immediately to shut off the gas. We do not recommend first responders attempt to shut off the gas themselves, but to wait for National Grid to do so, just to make sure that the right valves are being operated and that you are actually turning a valve off versus on. Can be a critical issue. Also evacuate the area, even if the gas leak is outside and it's venting to the atmosphere, it is still advisable to evacuate people away. And just be alert for the fact that the gas can migrate. So you may have some level of confidence that the gas leak is over a certain area, but the gas itself could be migrating underground or migrating through the atmosphere. And it can accumulate in storm drains, construction trenches, buildings, manholes, or get into other utility lines. Next page, please. And finally, just a little plug here. Some of you may or may not be aware that National Grid has a first responder and public safety online training course. So in addition to the annual meetings that we hold with all of our first responders and you know, individual visits we may do in your city or town, we also have an excellent e-learning program. The link to that is on the slide here. And in some areas, even you can get continuous learning education credit for taking this class. It's been highly rated, and we generally get really good feedback for those who have completed the course. We have some areas in our service territory where first responders are actually required to take the class. And if you would like to learn more about it, we can certainly get you some more information later on. Okay, so I'm just gonna pause. So that really ends the public safety and first responder piece of my presentation. I've just got 2 more slides to cover here before handing over to Eversource. And we were asked to provide a little bit of information about how we decide what gas mains need replacement. And really, there's 2 basic factors that we take a look at. First and foremost, replacing a leaking pipe or potentially leaking pipe is always done based on a full risk assessment of the pipe and a risk ranking. Actually, the laws here in Massachusetts mandate that we prioritize our pipe for replacement based on our distribution integrity management plan, or DIMP. That's actually where the phrase "know your system" comes from. So we're required to use the prioritization that we do for making decisions about how to maintain our assets on our system. We use those to select and prioritize the main that we need to replace. And so some of the categories of our distribution system that we look at, or the risk categories, are whether or not there's corrosion on the pipe, natural forces that have impacted the pipe if there's been excavation damage, or other outside forces that have damaged the pipe, or whether we've had material or equipment failures. In addition, we take all of those sort of factors about our pipe, we take that information, and then we also take a look at a bunch of other factors to figure out which pipe we should fix first or replace first. So we look at the leak repair history, the types of leaks that have occurred, what's the material and the age of the pipe, what's the surrounding geography, which may impact the potential that the pipe could have future leaks. We look at whether there's been construction activity, what the field conditions are, issues that have been raised by customers, the number of open leaks, so the leaks that we don't have to repair, how many are those on the pipe. Good amount of engineering judgment. Also, we've got a lot of very experienced gas engineers who are making decisions about how to maintain our assets. We also incorporate in any environmental or other location-specific factors. We take all of our risk ranking information, and then we reach out to our municipalities as well, and we share our plans with them. And where possible, although we must keep risk as a primary driver for the main segments we select to replace, we do attempt to coordinate with our municipalities to make sure that if there are any other municipal projects in the same area, that we're coordinating with the municipality, so that if you have water and sewer work going on and we have a main replacement, making sure we're working in coordination so that when the street is open, all the work can be completed. And then we also look to coordinate and replace any gas main that might occur at the time that there's street excavation or paving work that may occur within the city and towns. It's always preferable if we're able to get in there and do our work in advance of any paving projects, because of course, once you pave your streets, you don't want us cutting into them. And we don't want to have to cut into them to replace any leaking pipe. So that's a key consideration for us. And then next page, please, Brooks. And then finally, just little bit of information around gas leak repair and how gas leaks are prioritized for repair. So some of you may be aware when we go out, we investigate a leak, whether it's because somebody called in a gas odor or through our own leak surveys. We have a process by which we grade leaks, which is consistent across the state and in accordance with state laws and regulations. The most hazardous leaks are graded as grade 1, and we fix those leaks immediately. And if immediately doesn't mean this very second, we're required to take continuous action until we're able to repair the leak. And sometimes those leaks can stay open for a little period of time if there's some access issues. We've recently had like a leak under the MBTA tracks in Boston, and obviously we can't just start digging a hole right underneath the MBTA tracks. We've got to work with the MBTA, coordinate removal of the tracks, other such work to facilitate those repairs. The next level of leaks are grade 2 leaks, and these are recognized as non-hazardous at the time that they are discovered, but they have the potential to become hazardous over time. These are required to be repaired within 12 months. Most gas companies kind of take a second cut at this requirement, and for the most hazardous of the grade 2 leaks, there are some that we actually repair on a 6-month timeline. We reevaluate these gas leaks at least once every 6 months until they're repaired. So we go out, we'll do a leak survey on the leak location once every 6 months. And if we find that leak has become a grade 1, it will be fixed immediately. And the other thing with grade 2s and grade 3 leaks were required, and we do prioritize repair of leaks in school zones. The law specifically requires that we move those to the top of the list to fix, and we do so. And then finally, we have our grade 3s and our grade 3 SEIs, which is a subcategory of grade 3. And grade 3 leak is recognized as non-hazardous to persons or property. They're reevaluated every 3 months. And municipal or state officials can actually request in between our leak survey requirements, if they're concerned about a grade 3 leak, that we go out and we reevaluate that leak. It's a requirement of the law. Like the grade 2s, the leaks in the school zones are prioritized and repaired. And recent rules, state law and DPU regulation now requires that any new grade 3s that were found after January 1st, 2018, be repaired within 8 years. And in addition, they've also designated a subclass of grade 3 called grade 3 SEI, or significant environmental impact. And depending on the square footage of the migration pattern of the gas leak, if it's at least 2,000 square feet or greater, that leak is classified as an SEI, and that we are required to repair that leak within 2 years or replace the main within 5 years. And then for any leak where the leak extent measurement is greater than 10,000 square feet, the requirement is to eliminate that leak within 12 months or to replace the main within 2 years of that designation. There is an exception if there's some access related reason that the leak cannot be repaired. We can get an exception from the requirement. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Eversource to give you a lot more information about the SEIs and the survey process.
Great, thanks. And while Walter from Eversource is unmuting, Amy, just a point of clarification. I think at a certain point there, towards the end of that slide, you said that leaks should be evaluated every 3 months, and I think it says on your slides here that it's every 12 months. So
it is every 12. I'm so sorry. I think I saw the grade 3 and the 12, and my eyes must have, my old eyes must have mixed that up. Thank you, brother.
Totally fine. I figured that was the case. Okay, great. Thank you so much, Amy. Walter, are you ready to take it away on the Eversource?
Yes.
Section?
If you can hear me, Brooks, I am.
Yep, I can hear you and see you. Perfect.
And you're going to direct the slides, right?
Yep.
Okay. So first, thank you for inviting us to talk here. Appreciate Amy's overview. A lot of what she said is what we do. There's minor and marginal differences between company to company, but we basically are regulated and our processes are pretty much accomplish the same thing. So the first slide is just to level set us on the map. Brooke, on the next slide, actually. This is Massachusetts. It's the first test on the questions. But we are Eversource, and we currently are the green and the yellow on this map. We recently acquired the CMA of properties, so all of the map wasn't updated, but all the yellow and the green are our service territory. Next slide. So the topic of my part of the presentation is leak surveys and what we do to keep our systems safe and create a leak and monitor a leak. So we mobile our pipe. So we drive around over every buried pipe we have annually, mostly from March to November, classifying each leak that we find in a manner such as Amy described, and repairing it as is dictated. Class 1 or grade 1 leaks are repaired immediately. Class 2 or grade 2 leaks are repaired within 12 months. And class 3s are monitored and are, if there's environmentally significant, they are repaired at a different frequency. We also walk all of our services in a 3-year cycle. That includes the buried pipe, the meter, and if it's inside the house, we do the inside of the house too. We're actually walking that on foot. Again, the leaks are repaired in the same manner as I described a moment ago. Then the winter patrol, shortly we'll be getting frost in the ground, and we have designated areas in our systems where we drive in a similar fashion, looking for broken mains, looking for issues that are related to the weather. We will do that on a continual basis. And if the weather gets really cold, we'll do it on a continuous basis. We use Eversource. Every company does it a little differently. We do it around temperature. We monitor temperatures and then calculate a average temperature and then get after it after the temperatures on an average basis drop below 32. And we don't stop for the rest of the winter until the temperatures moderate. If we do find problems, if the weather gets extra cold, we increase the survey frequency, and we do it on a continuous basis all the time, 7 days a week. The last time I think is the winter of 15 is when we had a very, very cold period. And in certain parts of our Massachusetts territory, we were surveying on a continuous basis. When we do find leaks, we then monitor them. Amy spoke about the process. We monitor our leaks. Internally, we have a goal of repairing all our class 2 leaks in about 9 months. But if we haven't repaired it in 6 months, we go back out and verify that it hasn't gotten any worse. And the class 3 leaks we monitor annually. We also have part of our winter patrol. We review all class 2 leaks before the winter patrol starts, and we continue to review those open class 2 leaks during the winter patrol, especially to make sure that they haven't become more important, more hazardous leak due to frost or other weather conditions. Next slide, please. Again, the SEI leak classification is something we do when we survey the area. We calculate the spread of the leak as part of the investigation. And anything over 2,000 square feet is a significant environmental impact. And the process of repairing it is similar to what Amy referred to. Over 10,000 square feet and under 10,000 square feet are the two break points. And then in our replacement pipe program, the GSEP, the GSEP program, we have, if those leaks, which are typically driving some of our replacement programs, if they're on replacement programs, we have a little longer time to repair them. And typically they're replaced before they get repaired. At the moment, at our company, we have in 2020 we have 6 open lower 2,000 to 10,000 square foot SEI leaks. Right now, we only have 6 open leaks of that nature. Next slide, please. Again, we resurvey things to make sure that their conditions don't change. We don't sit back and let it until we repair it. We constantly challenge it. We're here for property, life and property. We're trying to protect the residents and the neighborhood. So we challenge and look for changing conditions. If a leak that we're on the SEI monitoring, if it escalates, if it gets more gas or more spread out, we would then reclassify it and it would become repaired in a class 2 or a class 1 schedule. Again, we found, and I think the analysis that TAG did later on to be presented would show you that the kinds of leaks that are found they're on mains that are on the top of our GSEP replacement program. And we are doing about 50 miles a year replacement in GSEP, and we are moving along on that. Next slide, please. The other part of our my presentation talks about odor. Amy spoke about natural gas has no odor, so we add odorant to it, and we get odor complaints from customers who smell gas, smell something. Amy went through the process that NGrid does. We, of course, have a similar program. We say that you should leave and call, but we tell them what not to do in a flyer. Here, as is always the first priority of the responder, our people going out there is public and property. They are out there to keep people safe. We look around. We do our investigation. We use calibrated CGI instrumentation, combustible gas indicator, to help us come to the point where we understand what is leaking and make our necessary repairs. We document everything on a copy of a form that's represented here of our first responder investigation form. They typically are meter service people. They're typically available 24 hours a day, and we have certain response criteria to get to the leak once notified, and we're monitored by the local DPU to make sure we maintain those service level agreements. And we make those agreements, I think it's 99.6% of the time, or something even better than that, annually across our whole service territory. I think that is my last slide. If no one has any questions or has questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Great, thank you, Walter, and thank you, Amy. We have a few minutes now before we have to go to Dom for his presentation. So if there are any questions now, I would ask folks to either put those in the chat or use the raise hand function in Zoom, which you can get to through the participants button. Or just turn your camera on and raise your actual hand, and I can call on you that way. So we have a question in the chat. Are all grade 3 leak extents surveyed?
Yeah.
We make a determination of the extent of a class 3 leak on every class 3 leak. So it's either we run the survey area, we run it out to zeros, and then we measure that area on every class 3 leak. Yes, if that's the question. Yes.
Yeah, and same for National Grid.
Great. Okay. Any other questions? Here we go. Question from Eileen in Marblehead. How much methane is leaking from a 2,000 square foot leak? Is that a dimension of ground over which methane is detected?
Yeah, I don't know if I could estimate how much gas is leaking, but what that means is we have found a reading that meets a class 3 criteria, and then we go radially away from that point until we get to 0. And then we measure the area. So it's a linked width square rectangle kind of thing, which means in the middle we had a reading. We ran it out to zeros. To 0, from 1 0 to the other in that rectangle is the area that we use. I believe that is the method we use to estimate it. I don't know if I know the amount that's escaping from that area, but I think it's some correlation between that square footage in the reg as a way to determine that.
Yeah.
But I don't know a numeric number.
Yeah, thanks, Walter. And Zainab Magabi from HEET in the chat helpfully pointed out that I think the quantity of gas coming out of that leak will depend on a number of factors, including the pressure of the pipe. So if a pipe is at higher pressure, we would assume that there would be more gas coming out of that. But yeah, the leak measurement is really just the square footage of ground where gas is detected when you're doing those measurements.
Yes.
Thanks, Walter. So we have a question for Amy and National Grid from Faye Strigler. Can you explain what happened with the 2 accidents at the Weymouth compressor station?
So that is not National Grid's asset. That actually belongs to the pipeline company. So you would have to direct those questions to them. I cannot answer those.
Okay, thanks.
To who? To Enbridge?
To Enbridge, yes. They would. I don't believe anyone from Enbridge is on the call, but they're the owners of that station. So they would have to explain that.
Yeah.
But they were gas leaks. So you wouldn't be involved even though they're gas leaks?
No, because it's not our facilities. We respond when it's our facilities. So
and I think one important distinction there is that, National Grid is a gas distribution company. And I think the point in the system that the Weymouth compressor station is at is more on the transmission side. So they're doing like bulk transmission of gas at the regional scale, and National Grid is getting the gas out to homes and businesses through their distribution system. So
that's right. Look, I guess I would just add, if neighbors, if we got a call in Weymouth, either from the Weymouth Fire Department or from a neighbor in the area that they smell gas, we would always respond. If we identified the source was something coming out of the compressor station, we would then make sure we had contacted Enbridge to have them come and respond to their facilities. So we don't make an assumption. It's not our system. If we get a call, we always go and we always check. But from a root cause perspective, I could not speak to that. It's not on our system.
Thanks, Faye. I'm going to move on. We have one more question from Ernesta, who asks how many SEIs are currently unrepaired in the National Grid system. And then I'm going to move on to Dom to give him time for his presentation. So Amy, how many SEIs on your system right now?
I think Dominic answered for me in the chat.
Yeah. Okay, there we go.
That we have, so thank you, Don. Really appreciate he had the number handy. So 723.
Yeah, and I guess that's a helpful question. I can just put in a plug here. So MAPC helps convene the Multi-Town Gas Leaks Initiative, which is a group of municipalities that get together periodically to talk about the issue of gas leaks. And we've started doing quarterly update webinars with National Grid, where they're reporting out. They send quarterly reports 4 times a year to the Department of Public Utilities with updates about their progress repairing gas leaks. And so that's the report that Dom is referring to in the chat there. And our next quarterly update webinar is going to be on December 3rd. So if you're interested in information about that, I'll include a link to the page to sign up for that before we wrap up today. But thanks for that question, Ernesta, and for allowing me to get that plug in there. Great. Okay, so we'll have time for discussion later. And so if there are more questions for Walter or Amy, we can certainly circle back to those. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dominic Nicholas from HEET to talk about their research and to dive a little deeper into the issue of gas leaks and significant environmental impact leaks. So take it away, Dom.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks very much. I'm just going to take a minute to share my screen. Hold on a second.
Perfect. And Dom, while you're doing that, Eileen, thank you for your question in the chat. I see that there, and I'll make a note of that. Let's make sure we circle back to that during the discussion portion, but thanks for typing that in.
Okay, can you all see the front page here? It should say SEIs.
Yep, looks good.
Okay, great, thanks. Okay. So yeah, I'm going to talk about significant environmental impact leaks a little bit. I'll start a little bit about HEET and some of the history about how we got here, and not of HEET but SEIs, and what we've been working on recently, and then finally end up on this recent study around SEIs that we were funded to do by the government. So let's jump into it. So significant environmental impact leaks. That's actually a map there that I just created recently of all of these types of leaks. So HEET's mission, our mission is to cut carbon emissions, and we're working on reducing, natural gas leaks to reduce these emissions. We don't take money from utilities or businesses. We're a non-profit. So just get that out of the way. Okay, so the problems with natural gas leaks, what are they? There's a number of them. This is a close-up of a gas pipe pressure map of downtown Boston. And, we have some very old gas pipes, some of them dating back to, believe it or not, President Lincoln. And natural gas, as I'm sure a lot of you know, is mainly composed of, potent greenhouse gas, methane, which is about 84 times more potent than carbon dioxide over the first 20 years in the atmosphere. So if carbon dioxide is like a blanket over the earth, then we're looking at 84 of those blankets. So another problem is gas is explosive, and we're all painfully familiar with this recent Merrimack Valley gas disaster. Gas can kill and damage trees and other plant life, and gas customers are paying for the leaked gas ultimately. So what's the scale of this problem? Well, the gas leaks are widespread in Massachusetts, and utilities are required to report them to the Department of Public Utilities every year. This map is of leaks at the end of 2019, and it's showing leaks reported by the 6 largest utilities in our state. And there were approximately 16,000 roughly unrepaired leaks at the end of last year, and about 11,500 leaks were repaired by the end of last year. So the emissions from all these leaks is equivalent to the emissions of all of the state's stores and businesses combined. So that's an enormous amount of emissions. That's one of the main problems we're trying to address. So we take, HEET takes this reported data, and we've been doing this for years, and we map it. And we map over 250 towns annually, including years of historical leak data. And you can go to these maps for your town. You can go to squeakyleak.org, or you can go to our heetma.org website and access those maps. We're also now sharing this data. We geocode it now and we share it so that towns can integrate this data into their own information systems. And there's a number of benefits for doing that. You can use this to tell your own stories of gas leaks and raise awareness about gas leaks in your towns. It can also be used together with other information systems, like one classic case I'm seeing developing is the use of this data with urban tree inventories for a number of different projects. And also it can be used together with public works systems to, the idea there is to increase coordination between towns and gas utilities when there's road work going on where there might be existing unrepaired leaks. So those are some of the uses. And if you want to bring this data into your own towns, just contact us through our website and we'll help you get that up. This is actually an example of a pilot we're working on at Salem. This is data they've brought into their own mapping system, and we're developing a whole new website there to use this. They're using this actually in a couple of different ways, also integrating this with their own urban tree inventories and DPW systems. Those maps are not shown here, but this is an interactive map that they've got using our data that's geocoded and shared. And they're also integrating that with other data sets. This is a kind of a chloropleth map of gas leaks by neighborhoods and gas leaks by environmental justice areas. And there's many other different uses that we can use this data with. So back to the main story though. So how do we try and address this problem of gas leaks? Research in 2016 found that the largest 7% of a set of leaks emit half of the emissions, and we call those super-emitting leaks. And so when you see SEIs, significant environmental impact leaks, these are the same things. We're talking about the same thing there. So our idea is, if we can fix the largest 7%, then we can cut these emissions from these leaks in half. So in 2016, a law was passed, working together with the Gas Leaks Allies, which is a coalition of over 25 nonprofits and researchers. He helped to pass a law that these leaks of significant environmental impact, these super emitters, must be reported and repaired. But the question was, well, how to identify those significant environmental impact leaks? The utilities didn't have a proven method for identifying them. So he did a study to determine what a good identification method would be. And so we worked with the utilities to test out these different methods. And what we found was that this study found that the size of the leak's footprint is an excellent proxy for the leak's emissions. The amount of gas coming out of that leak relates to its overall rectangular, or its overall extent. We measure it in a rectangular sense. So leaks, we found over 2,000 square feet captured about half of all of the emissions from the leaks that we were studying. And the method for measuring leak footprints in this way is called the leak extent method. So at this point, there was the requirement to report and fix SEIs, and we had a cheap and simple proven way to measure the leak extent method. And so the gas utilities and Mothers Out Front worked to come up with a shared action plan to identify and repair these SEIs. And it's a 5-year plan. We're into year 2. We started with a pilot year. We did year 1. Now we're into year 2. And this plan commits us to using a leak extent method to identify SEIs. It requires, as Amy went over, the timelines for repairing these things. It also includes an outside independent verification, which is what HEET actually does, and increased transparency and reporting, which is happening. And again, it's going on for years. So we're going to keep doing this. We've got 4 years of this until utilities can identify and repair these SEIs really well. And it's definitely been going well. The trajectory is a really positive one. So I want to just give you some updates now about what happened in those years so far that we've studied, and then talk about our recent study. So in the field trial, we call it field trial, in 2018 and 19, Eversource in Columbia Gas used the leak extent method consistently to identify SEIs in the field. There was some under-identification. We think probably because this is a new protocol, and the gas companies are just getting up to speed with using it, which is okay. And we also found that leak repairs were not always successful. And I think it's worth highlighting that this is a first-in-the-nation model, and it shows that gas distribution companies can successfully, identify and repair SEIs, and that we found that the measurements of individual leaks were relatively consistent over a work season, even when measured by different personnel from different organizations and varying weather conditions. So in year one, which is now, it ended this year, kind of goes across the year boundaries, so 2019, 2020, we saw an increased adoption of the leak extent method. And we also found that if we can improve training perhaps around the use of leak extent method, we could potentially improve the utilities' identification and measurements of these SEIs. The other interesting finding is that we're seeing leak populations changing, and whilst we set out with a 2,000 square foot limit or threshold, we might want to instead adapt that and look at how, what our population is for the year and pick off the top 7% of the largest ones. So we're just going to explore that in the next year, I think. Again, we found leak repairs were not always successful, but the goal, I think the takeaway also is the goal of reducing the emissions from these leaks by 50%. It feels like it's within reach, and that's really a really positive takeaway from that year. Okay, so into this year, well, beginning last year and ending this year, we started this government funded study, which is why we're all here right now. And it was really about looking into learning more about SEIs and how might this grade or this subcategory of grade 3s, how might they change over time? So we studied about just over 100 confirmed SEI leaks. We measured them in fall of last year and spring and summer of this year. And we used standard industry practices by an operator qualified technician. All the leaks were graded for safety and hazard for explosion. And any grade 1s that we found during this work, we always called them in immediately. So some of the findings, we found that this exploratory research suggests that the larger SEIs grew the most. So the SEIs over 10,000 square feet, on average, grew about 60%. They got bigger by 60%. The SEIs smaller than 5,000 square feet grew only about 12%. So quite a big difference. We also found that some of the SEIs changed grade. The two observed causes for these grade changes were gas building up in confined spaces and gas proximity to buildings. Those are the two reasons. And we found that about 12% or 12 out of this 101 became at worst a grade 2, and 5 became at worst a grade 1. And then one of the other key findings, the larger SEIs, again, the ones above 10,000 square feet, changed grade relatively more than the smaller ones. So we saw like a 50% change rate for the larger ones, and around 13% for the ones less than 10,000 square feet. But I want to add there that we had less leaks above 10,000 square feet to study, so we need to do more study around this. But what we don't know is whether this is normal variation yet within a year, or whether it's consistent phenomenon. So I'll get back to that in a second. Some of the other findings, we found leak repairs were not always successful. SEIs were also found predominantly on low pressure 6-inch cast iron mains installed before 1930. And the other main category was intermediate pressure 2-inch coated steel pipe installed after 1930. Okay, what does it all mean? Well, the data still strongly supports the recommendation, if you smell gas, call it in, even if you know the leak is on the map from last year. Okay, so as part of this study, HEET's also created a new interactive SEI map with, again, shareable geocoded data. And this map will be live in December on our website, and you're all welcome to use it. One of the questions I just wanted to answer, one of the questions that came up earlier in the chat was how many. This data, this map that you're looking at here is based on the Q3 inventory report submitted by the utilities to DPU. And it roughly across National Grid, Eversource, and Columbia, there are roughly 865 reported SEIs of greater than 2,000 square feet. And of those, about 800 are unrepaired at this point, or as of that report date. Okay, so what's next? It's all great to start the study, but I think it threw up more questions than we're not quite ready to make lots of big conclusions. But there were some potential patterns that emerged from this study that we think are worth exploring. One of the obvious ones is, let's finish the year up. Let's study what happens to them in winter. And we've actually started doing that. And ideally, we'd like to spread this study out across multiple years. It's all, our funding was limited on this one study, so it's good to see these other questions coming up. I think another thing I'd really want to include is studying more of the largest SEIs. We didn't have as many of those to study. And then another key piece, what is a normal footprint variation and why does it vary? And the variation of these leaks over time, we didn't get into the causality of that, but one of the assumptions is that a normal variation of a leak, this type of leak, is about 20%. So we use that as our threshold, but we really need to understand that more and do more study around that. And then also studying repair rates across all grades. Over the last 3 years, we've tried to look at repair rates, at least for SEIs, but it's historically just been consistently a small data set each time. And I'd love to be able to compare that to other grades to see if SEIs are harder or have different kinds of repair rate statistics. So that's the kind of the whole history and the summary of where we're at. We've got a lot more work to do, and I'm going to throw it back to Brooks for ideas and questions. Thank you. Let me stop my screen share here. There we go.
Great, thanks so much, Dom. And we are similarly running ahead of time. So I'm actually gonna take a few minutes in just a little bit to review some resources that are available to folks if they wanna continue learning more about these issues and engaging on the issue of gas leaks. But just wanna pause to see if there are any burning questions for Dom on his presentation right now. So one Marcos Luna is asking, is the HEET study published?
That's a great question. Part of this project was to do this this meeting. This was originally going to be a day-long workshop, but because of COVID, we've moved it online and made it a lot shorter. Once we've finished this workshop, we're going to circle back and finish off the study, bring in those winter surveys, and then we'll publish it at the end of this year, and we'll publish that on our website.
Great. Thanks, Dom. Any other questions? Faye, I see your hand up there.
Yeah, you had mentioned that the map has also takes into account leaks in environmental justice communities. Now, is that on the HEET website, or is that something you're going to put out in the future?
Oh, that's a great question. So that map that showed the environmental justice areas, that is a pilot that we're working with Salem to develop. So that's the town of Salem. And this is just to show what is actually possible, the things you can actually do with this data. Now, I think, HEET would love to do many, many more things, including data visualization like that for people, for towns in general. But I think at this point, I'm trying to empower the towns themselves to do this. So that's just something that you can do with it. So if you'd like, I can connect you with Salem and the people I'm working with there, and you can find out more, and we can work with you if you want to do that too.
Yeah, I would love to. Yeah, that would be wonderful.
Okay.
Is it something you'll put in the chat, or should
no,
I give you my email?
I will follow up with you directly after this on that.
Oh, terrific. Thank you so much.
Great. Thanks, Faye.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Other questions for Dom?
Also, I just want to point out, I believe HEET will be doing what's called a community conversation, which will do a much deeper dive into the study's findings. There was actually a more technical report based around this. If you're interested, we'll see. We'll let everybody know if that's going to happen. We haven't decided exactly yet, but that may happen.
Great. Thanks, Dom. Okay, so I think I'm going to just run through a couple of quick slides about some other resources for folks, and then we'll open it up for a broader discussion. And just before I do that, I would love, I think we have close to 40 people on still in the workshop, and if folks have burning questions about gas leaks, and I think particularly because we have folks who are first responders participating in the workshop here, if you all have experience with responding to gas leaks in your communities, or things that issues that members of your community have been raising with you when they're calling in, we'd love to hear from you. So I'll run through a few quick resources, and then we'll open it up for broader discussion. So I'll just share my screen here real quick. Great. Okay, so one resource that I wanted to mention just quickly is a report that we put out a few years ago with HEET called the Fixing Our Pipes, Coordinating Natural Gas Main Replacement. And it's a few years old at this point, but this report really hits on a lot of the themes that Amy and Walter mentioned in their presentation, and sort of laid the groundwork for the research that that Dom and HEET have been doing over the last few years. And this was a report that MAPC and HEET put together after interviewing municipalities and folks working in municipalities to find out what they were seeing on the ground and what their concerns were. So it includes data about gas leaks in our region. It also includes some case studies and some best practices, particularly from communities that are finding effective ways to work with National Grid, Eversource, their local gas companies to get leaks repaired faster and also to be more efficient about how they coordinate so that they're not having to rip up the same stretch of pavement 2 times in quick succession and that sort of thing. So that's a resource. Thanks, Audrey, for posting the URL and the link there. It's fixourpipes.org. So would encourage you to check that out if you're hungry for more information about this topic. And the next resource that I'll mention that Dom also highlighted there is that squeakyleak.org website, where you can find all of the maps, either and the leaks broken down by service territory and by community. So it's a really great resource. Dom and his team are working really hard to keep that up to date and updated regularly. And just an example of how I used that recently, Eileen Matthew from Marblehead is on the workshop today, and we were doing a report for the town of Marblehead where I used some of that data and compared it to a photo that the town planner had sent me of a tree that had been killed by gas leaks, and I was able to find the gas leak on the map that MAPC had generated, and then compare that to the street view from the Google map, and just kind of point out that the unrepaired leak in that neighborhood in Marblehead was damaging trees. And so I think that's an example of how you might use those maps, and it's just a really useful tool that I've started building into my own work. So I think also for folks who are curious about leaks in their neighborhood, folks who might be calling in leaks multiple times, it's also just a good way to check to see whether the leaks are still on the radar of the gas companies, and whether they've been repaired or they're listed as repaired or not. So again, that's squeakyleak.org, or the full link I think somebody from HEET can put in the chat.
Yeah, you can do squeakyleak.org. That will redirect you to our HEET website. I've also put in the chat a link to the first, the field trial report. You can read all the details there, and we'll be putting out a new report for year 1 plus this evolution study, hopefully by the end of this year as well.
Great. Okay, and then I mentioned this before, but the Multi-Town Gas Leaks Initiative is a group of municipalities and residents in the National Grid service territory specifically, because as Amy mentioned, they have the bulk of the leaks in our region and the biggest network of pipes. The initiative is really sort of designed to help municipalities connect with National Grid and with each other to talk about how to fix leaks faster, and how to share information amongst each other, and to coordinate more effectively to facilitate that leak repair process, and to connect about the issue of gas leaks around the region. So as I mentioned, we're doing a series of quarterly update webinars that feature National Grid giving a sort of a summary of their quarterly reports to the Department of Public Utilities, and then usually another sort of special topic, often featuring the great work that HEET is doing, or other relevant information to present to that group. And the next one is coming up on December 3rd, so we would love to have you join us for that. And you can email me, bwinner@mapc.org, to get on our mailing list and learn more about that. So just wanted to mention those few resources before we open it back up for discussion here. So I guess, so one question that I'll sort of throw to the group to see if anybody has any thoughts or stories to share, and particularly for the first responders on the call today, are there issues that you have that you've been running into over and over again with your residents, with the folks that you're serving? And is there anything that you're kind of curious about, either learning more from the utilities about, or from folks like Dom who are doing the research on the ground into the gas leaks? Feel free to unmute yourself or turn on your camera, or just type it in the chat if you have any thoughts.
Hi there. The only thing I see in Acton is there's a group in Acton here that has a bunch of pipes they put all throughout the town at different times that show the gas leaks that are live in this town. And they were actually at an event handing out stuff last year. So besides that, that's about the only thing I see. But you know, the utilities are very responsive. Every time we call them, they come right out. And I know they've been replacing some mains and have been in town doing their leaks diligently. So besides that group, I don't see or have any other questions.
Yeah, and thanks for that example from Acton. And I think you guys are actually a really good example of a community that is doing a lot of work on this issue at multiple levels. As you mentioned, you have a pretty active group of citizens that are concerned about the leaks from a safety perspective and an environmental perspective. But your municipal government has also been really engaged in coordinating with the utilities to make sure that they're on top of those leaks as they're identified, and that you guys aren't kind of working at in sort of opposition to each other, tearing up pavement, that kind of thing. And I know that Acton has also been really actively involved in sort of leading and guiding the multi-town gas leaks initiative. John Mangiarotti has been really involved with us. So really appreciate all the work that you guys are doing. And I think it's a really good example for other municipalities in the region. Other thoughts or stories or questions that folks want to share? Yeah, go ahead, Lori.
I put mine up that I've been in Watertown for about 30 years, and there is a gas or some kind of smell in Watertown Square where there's buses and businesses. It might be the 9 Galen Street I'm seeing on the map, but there's never been a change. That scent of whatever it is has been there forever. I don't know what it is. Does anybody know?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good question. If it smells like the odorant that Amy mentioned, it's probably a leak somewhere. And in a square like that, it could even be multiple leaks combining. And one of the things that I've heard from Dom and from folks at the utilities is that because of the nature of gas and the way that that it works and the way that physics works, it can be difficult to, particularly on older pipe systems, which I imagine Watertown's system is. It can be it can sometimes be like sticking your finger in a hole somewhere and the the leak just comes out from a little further up the line or down the line. So I think you know, Amy's advice and Walter's advice was really like, if you smell gas, call it in. And I think that's, you know, it may not be to the point where it's a hazardous leak, a grade 1 leak, or a potentially hazardous leak.
It says 3 if it's the same one.
Yeah. Walter, any thought there? No. Okay. Oh,
Yeah, no.
Actually,
First, I'll roll back to your original point. It's incumbent upon us with all our replacement programs to tie out our work to the municipalities. And we spend a great deal of time circulating our plans a year or so ahead of time to try to coordinate water replacement, sewer replacement, just overall paving. It's not in our interest to be out there digging hot pavement to find a leak. We have improved. We see more improvement, of course. There's no doubt every chance we get, we can improve. But it is clearly a best practice that we would like to embrace, of including every municipality. Our problems end up being that our resources are limited. So we need to work with all the utilities need to work with the municipalities to coordinate things so that our money can be gone across more and more projects. We spend a lot of time doing that, and we get water companies and gas companies and other people that own infrastructure under the ground to meet with the towns to try to help everybody get that going, because it's better for everybody. So that's a great observation somebody on the call made, and it's something we do all the time. One of the things that Dominic said in one of his slides, and I would like to tell Lori, is don't, because there was a slide that he said, don't, because it's an old leak, don't not call it in. We don't respond that way. We treat every call as if it's a brand new call. We don't go to an existing leak map and not come because, oh yeah, that's a leak we found 2 weeks ago. We're okay. We go to every leak as if it's a brand new event for us. That's because we're looking at the safety. Again, going back to life and property, we need to go out to the job. Amy and I spoke of the 3 kinds of leaks. And I can't speak to Amy's company, but we do have another kind of thought in regard to nuisances. We don't want the first responders on the call to always be going to the same leak. And then we get there. And when I do fire training, I tell the firemen, you know, you come out there every day and we come out and then we say, oh, we're good. You know, it's not a hazardous leak, because that is what we're looking for. But we need to work together to reduce the number of those kinds of nuisance leaks that end up being the thing that screws up your afternoon if you're a volunteer fireman and you have to go and respond. So raising that issue to the local area through the towns that we're talking to here is the way to get that resolved, if it isn't resolved by its own natural event. Because as an area manager, if I was operating, I don't want to go to the same leak all the time. That's a nuisance to my people too. So we don't strictly go by the 1, 2, 3. We also go by a overlay on top of that, which is multiple calls and trying to reduce that, because that reduces the confidence that people have in what we do, and we're trying to build that confidence up.
great. Thanks, Walter.
Okay, thank you.
And thanks for the question, Lori. I see a question here from George Doucette. Is there a map of locations where the mercaptan, I think it says, is added to the product? In other words, is there a chance of clusters of calls due to that leaking and not gas local to certain sites?
If mercaptan is embedded in the natural gas, so it's not going to leak on its own in a natural gas. So if you smell mercaptan, that's an indication there's gas there. It's not mercaptan on its own in a typical behavior. We typically inject at Eversource, inject at the endpoints where we take the gas out of the transmission. That's where we monitor the mercaptan. We're required by federal regs to have a certain amount of odorant in the gas. We inject it there, and then we do monthly readings inside the system. So if you imagine a spoken wheel, we're putting gas out on the perimeter and looking at it in the inside, where the furthest away from the points of injection to make sure we have adequate coverage. It should be diffused across the whole gas stream. It shouldn't be puddling up. It stays in the pipe. So knowing where it's injected doesn't really increase the number of, or the density, or the likelihood of a gas leak. There are times that propane gets mixed up, and propane can confuse people because it smells similarly. And somebody driving around the back of their car bring in their spent cylinder to the waste treatment plant with a valve open. That can be, that's a true story, and you end up chasing it all over town, and you can find it because you can follow the truck that drove with it. So people call, and it's a pretty effective way to find leaks, but there isn't really a correlation to injection point and density of leak if it's done the way it's supposed to be done.
Great, thanks, Walter. And thanks for that question. We also have a question in the chat about whether any towns have been able to get utilities to reimburse them for damage to trees or trees lost due to gas leaks. And I can take a stab at that unless somebody else wants to dive in. But Eileen, to your question, that's a topic that some sort of a working group of the Multi-Town Gas Leaks Initiative has been diving into, and I think it's certainly a sort of a tricky issue, but it's also one that I think a lot of communities in the area are thinking about because they see street trees that are being damaged or killed in the proximity of gas leaks, and they're wondering what they can do about that, and how to work with the utilities to make sure that that's not happening. So, Amy, Walter, any thoughts on that question?
I'm going to stay away from that one.
Okay, fair enough.
There are lots of things going on in this street that cause, lots of things go around in the street that cause trees not to thrive.
Great. So interesting question in the chat there from Faye for any first responders. Wondering if any of you all have been working across multiple towns and cities together on the gas leaks issue, and do first responders work with MEMA on preventing disasters like gas explosions? I imagine the answer is yes. Okay, hearing no answers to that, feel free to drop thoughts on that in the chat, but I think we can move on from that. So it's almost 1:30. We have until 2 o'clock if we'd like to, and happy to stick around and keep discussing this. And I think I just want to say if there are other questions that folks want to have answered, please feel free to drop those in the chat. But I think in terms of the next steps from this workshop, Dom and I have been working on this project for the better part of I guess over a year now at this point, and we really see this workshop as part of kind of an ongoing line of work to raise awareness about gas leaks and what to do about them, both on a safety and first response front, and also from an environmental angle to make sure that we're reducing emissions from gas leaks around the region. So I think the questions and the topics that you all have raised here are really helpful to us as we're thinking about where to take this work next, and informing Dom's research and the work that Zainab and Audrey and everybody at HEET are doing around gas leaks, as well as the the discussions that we're having with municipalities through the multi-town gas leaks initiative. And I also think that it's really helpful to have Amy and Walter and Bob Buffon from Eversource is also here on, just to hear from you all. And I know the utilities are working with first responders on a regular basis around the safety trainings and other trainings and discussions. But we really appreciate you all being here to have this dialogue, to dive into this issue with us. So Dom, I don't know if I don't see any other questions coming in. I'll make a last call for any questions from the group.
No, I mean, if you think of questions after this, please feel free to email us directly, or we can open up a discussion at any point if you have questions.
Great. Dom, I don't know if you've done this already. Do you want to drop your email address in the chat there?
Yep.
And that's also a good reminder that I had promised to also add a link to the registration for our upcoming quarterly update webinar. And Laura, to your question, yes, so the recording of this is going to be posted on the MAPC YouTube channel, and we can follow up with you all with the recording. We'll try to get that out to you in a few days. Sometimes it takes us a little while to upload those files, but yeah, happy to share the recording with folks who registered, and I know there were some folks who registered and weren't able to make it, so we'll follow up with those materials. And yeah, I'm just going to quickly grab the link to the registration for that December quarterly webinar, and then we will adjourn. Anything else? Dom, you got a gas leaks joke you want to tell, or something to fill the space here?
Well, last night HEET did its fundraiser, and we played Kahoot, this online game. We were just laughing at this. This would have been such a different meeting if we had Kahoot questions at the end of it, and awards and prizes. But no, I need to develop my my gas jokes, so I'll work on that for the next one. But I just want to say thank you to everybody for coming. This has been a big project for HEET and MAPC for a year now. So appreciate you all attending. I hope you took something away from it.
Okay, and there's the link to the Multi-Town Gas Leaks Initiative quarterly update webinar in the chat. We'd love to have you join us for that. Thank you again, Walter and Amy and Bob and everybody for being here this afternoon. And yeah, be in touch if you have questions. We'll send out the recording, and thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for inviting us.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.